Okay, I need to know exactly what the hell is going on here. Sheriff Guthrie was standing outside 728 Weimer Street. They had been there for most of the day, he and his two deputies, but they still knew very little. Their cars were arranged in the street, the blue and white lights pulsing slowly, and they were getting a lot of foot traffic from pedestrians who seemed to be going up and down the street as slowly as they could. If there was one thing that Sheriff Guthrie couldn't stand, worse than being called temporary Sheriff Guthrie, it was looky-loos. The people of Cashmere would get a full accounting as soon as he himself knew what was going on, and until then, they just better be patient. "Well," Officer Wood began, "we got the call at about 8:15 this morning. It was because of all the screaming. People said it sounded like someone was getting gutted like a pig, but they weren't sure who. The residence had apparently been abandoned for nearly a decade, so there shouldn't be anybody there to scream. The last owners were the Duffys, and most people agree they didn't do a lot of screaming. They did a certain amount of other things, like cutting their grass too late at night," and Sheriff Guthrie pinched the bridge of his nose and tried not to scream at the man. Woods would have been better served working at Stagview. He was big, brutish, and kind of slow. A job at the prison would have probably been right up his alley. Unfortunately, he had managed to pass his policeman's exam, and would forever be Guthrie's problem, it seemed. "Be easy on the boy," came a creepy old voice in his ear. "His daddy was one of the best deputies I ever had, right up until that moonshiner shot him in the back of the head. Damn waste." Guthrie didn't even flinch as the old spook gossiped. He had been haunted by the ex-sheriff of Cashmere for most of his career, and he wasn't going to let it drive him crazy just yet. He was sure that the old ghoul was standing over his shoulder, but looking would only make him look paranoid. "Officer Woods," and when he said it, his fellow deputy jumped a little. "I think we can move past the play-by-play. What I want to know is what's going on in the house right now." "Right," Officer Woods said as he flipped through his notebook. "Well, me and Pines arrived at the scene at about 8:30 and began dispersing the people who were on the scene. They had also heard the screaming and came to have a look, but we sent them off fairly easily. We then attempted to enter the residence, but the doors were locked, and we did not have a way to gain entry." "Uh-huh," Guthrie said, spinning a finger to indicate he should go on. "Then what happened?" "Well, Pine suggested we go check out that big window around the front. There's a big picture window that looks in on the—" "Yes, I can see the window. Move it along." "Right, so we looked in the window, and that's when we seen all them people inside." "How many people would you say were inside?" "A whole bunch," Officer Woods said proudly. Guthrie had to restrain himself from strangling the man. He knew it wouldn't be the only time that day. "I need an exact number, Woods. This is going in the official paperwork, and they're going to want us to be exact." Officer Woods scratched his head like this was difficult work. Guthrie had actually inquired at the high school to see if there was something mentally wrong with the deputy, but he had been assured that Deputy Woods was as bright and capable as any other resident of Cashmere. Guthrie wasn't sure if that spoke more of Woods or less of the citizens of Cashmere, but he supposed he would have to do what he could with what he had. Pines wasn't a lot better. The man could be counted upon to come to work, but he was lazy once he managed to get here. If there had been any other prospects in Cashmere, Guthrie would have probably let both of them go and added 2 new guards to the ranks of Stagview. Unfortunately, the 6 deputies he had seemed to be all he was going to get, so he'd have to make the best of it. I guess there was about 6 of them. You guess or you know? I saw 6 people in the living room that were in danger. Guthrie looked up, fixing Officer Woods with a skeptical look. In danger? From what exactly? Oh yeah, I forgot that part. There was a big animal in there with them, like a tiger or something. It was growling and snarling back at them, pushing them into the corner. They all seemed really scared, and it looked like they were all pretty sure they were gonna die. Sheriff Guthrie closed his notebook and fixed Officer Woods with a highly skeptical look. So what you're saying is I need to put out an APB for a tiger. Deputy Woods immediately shook his head. No, not a tiger. This one was all black. So a panther then. Deputy Woods scratched his head again, and Guthrie started to worry that he might wear a hole in it. Well, if it was the weirdest panther I've ever seen. And why is that? It, had sleek black skin and no eyes. Sheriff Guthrie rolled his eyes, wondering if he needed to drug test Woods before he could let him go back to work. He had heard some cockamamie stories, but this one was a real doozy. He was supposed to believe that some weird, eyeless creature had attacked a family of 6 in the house. What was he going to do? Put out an APB for some kind of weird animal without eyes? This was ridiculous, but it was also Cashmere, and he knew that weird things sometimes happened here. Just because he had never seen some eyeless cat creature out in the woods didn't mean that it didn't exist. He would need to get a look at the house first before he could say anything, and he decided that that would need to be his next step if this investigation was to go any further. Have you managed to get into the house yet? Oh, well, no, sir. We didn't have a warrant, and Woods, how many times do we have to go over this? If you watch a bunch of people get mauled to death by an animal in their home, you don't need a warrant. He had begun heading for the house, practically running, and Woods was right behind him. Pines was on the front porch, standing guard against anyone who might decide they wanted a closer look, and when he saw the sheriff coming, he stood up like he absolutely had not been having a nap up until that point. Guthrie didn't have the time to reprimand anybody today. He needed to assess what was going on in this house, and pretty quickly, too. He went to the window where Woods said he had seen several people being eaten up. And when he got there, what he found was not a pile of dismembered bodies, but a house party in full swing. Woods, your dead people look awfully lively for a group that's been killed by a big cat. Woods stood there, shaking his head in disbelief. I swear, I watched that cat eat 'em up. What's more, it's even the same group of people. Sheriff Guthrie had to admit this was not the sort of party he had expected to find here. It wasn't the sort of house party that one usually expected outside of Halloween. Everyone inside was in costumes, like the kind you would expect to see in a roaring 20s party, and they were all standing around, drinking from champagne flutes as they toasted whatever event was going on. It was a pretty swanky affair, he had to admit, but it definitely wasn't a bunch of dead people who had been eaten up by a giant cat. One look at the clock also told Guthrie that something else was amiss. The clock on the mantelpiece said that it was 1:15 and Guthrie hadn't even had his lunch yet. Has anybody tried to make contact with anyone in the house? Both deputies shook their heads, and Guthrie took it upon himself to rap his knuckles against the window. When the people inside made no indication that they had heard or seen him, he did it again. By the third knock, it became apparent that they either couldn't see him or were the biggest bunch of assholes he had ever met. So these people definitely were not having a party when you saw them, he asked Woods. Nope, but it's the same bunch of people. I recognize a few of them, though they were a little less put together the last time I saw them. Suppose being mauled to death will do that to a person, Guthrie quipped. As the clock struck midnight, something Guthrie couldn't hear so much as see, something changed inside the party. A woman put a hand over her mouth and screamed. At least that's what it looked like. And Guthrie watched as a large, angry-looking animal stepped around the corner and into the living room. It was a big son of a bitch, easily 5 feet high on all fours, and it began ripping into the guests like a battering ram. People ran and screamed. A few of them hit the window and began banging their fists on it. And as the 3 policemen watched the carnage unfold, Guthrie was the first one to snap back to reality. Get this door open now, he shouted, pulling his gun as he approached. Woods kicked the door 4 good times, and as it burst open, the deputies piled in with the sheriff in tow, greeted with nothing but an empty living room. What the hell? Guthrie said quietly, as the 3 of them moved around, looking for clues. The room was devoid of anything. There was no furniture, no trash, not even the leavings of people who break into a place to make out or stay for a couple of nights. The walls were so bare they were nearly stark, and Guthrie was tempted to move back out onto the porch and see if the scene was still unfolding. What is this, old man? If the ghost of Sheriff Masterson knew, he did not say. Guthrie put his service pistol away, turning to the 2 deputies as he prepared to give orders. That was when his eyes fell on a long scratch on the floor, and he suddenly wondered if it had been made by careless movers or the claws of something large and terrifying. I want tape around the whole place. Nobody comes in, nobody goes out. What do we tell people? Woods was asking as he put away his own revolver and looked around the house like a kid inside a haunted mansion. We don't tell them a damn thing. It's none of their business. It's nobody's business but ours. He walked shakily back to his squad car, but he couldn't help one last glance at the front glass of that big picture window. Woods and Pines were already putting up the tape, and from here, the window looked normal. I've always said that Cashmere is one hell of a place, said Sheriff Masterson from the back seat. Sheriff Guthrie ignored him as he drove back to the station. There would be paperwork to file, and it would have to be doctored to make sure it looked absolutely perfect. Just because weird stuff happened didn't mean the paperwork didn't have to make sense.
Good evening, everyone. It's me, Dr. Plague. Thank you so much for joining us for tonight's show. If you think you might like a little more spooky in your life, then please feel free to click on one of the videos we have up here. Maybe look at one of the playlists if you're trying to get caught up. I know, there's so many videos on the channel. There's so many series that are going at the same time. Sometimes you just need a little refresher course, and I gotta say, I always enjoy the views. If you're not subscribed, feel free to hit that subscribe button. Maybe hit the bell so you don't miss anything. We upload a lot on this channel, so you won't want to miss a single story as they come out. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click on the Amazon link down there. There's quite a few books in my Amazon account. You can have a look, and if you'd like a signed copy, get up with me through email, and I'll be happy to work something out with you. Also, there's links to my Patreon, and you can become a member on the channel if you'd like your spooky a little bit early. Patrons and members on the $5 tier get their videos 12 hours early. That's in the morning as opposed to in the evening. Patrons at the $10 level also get a signed copy of my book anytime I write one. Speaking of my patrons, you should see them appearing right now. Just wanted to take a minute to say how much I appreciate all of you. Patrons, subscribers, however you give to the channel. I really appreciate everything you do, and it truly touches me that you have chosen to support the channel in this way. Well, that's enough for now. Till next time, Dr. Plague, signing off. Have a wonderful evening.